Say, man, I don't know her. She's too quiet.
Matter the pain I caused you, I know your love remains the same. No, you'll be fine without me. Don't know if I could say.
What up, though? It's your girl, She's Too Quiet, and welcome back to the She's Too Quiet podcast. She's Too Quiet is all about remembering your voice matters. Although you may be quiet, people are actually interested in you. They want to know where you go and where you don't go, and what you like and what you don't like. Don't be afraid to use your voice. Your voice matters. On today's episode, I am going to share my testimony. I know we all have testimonies on how we have struggled and come out on the other side. And today I thought it would be fitting that I share mine. I know this may be a shock to some, maybe not. But I am not without sin. I am not without, blame. I'm not without doing people wrong and all of that stuff. We all sin and fall short of the glory of God. And I think sometimes we don't really take into account that everyone is human, no matter how well they present themselves, no matter how their demeanor is. People are human and they're not always who they present themselves to be. But in the end, we do share similar experiences and we have similar testimonies. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds with this, but I'm just going to share a little bit about how God showed me who He was and how I turned my life over to Him after realizing His love for me. So I pretty much grew up in the church. My parents, they've always had a huge faith life growing up. I can never picture myself not going to church. Church was really my whole life. My parents were active members of the church. They would be involved in ministry. I was involved in media slightly a little bit. I worked in a nurses guild. I also would be a part of the children's ministries. So my whole life was church growing up. For me, in my childhood church, I really didn't connect with a lot of people there. I was definitely a person that clung to my parents. There were some people in the church that I connected with, but not a lot. Like I've said before, I'm a quiet girl, so I don't like to let a lot of people in, especially if I'm not super comfortable. So that's kind of how I grew up, even in the church. As I got older, once you hit high school years, you start coming to that mindset to where it's like, y'all told me about not doing stuff. Y'all told me about sin. Y'all tell me about living for God and stuff, but I need to see it for myself. Like, I want to live life how I want to live life. Like, I get it. God died for me and all of this stuff, but I really want to experience what's out there in the world. I think a lot of us growing up in church, we all have that side to us to where we're just waiting. And we're like, man, once I get the opportunity, I'm going to see what's out there. And I thank God that I made it back. But, a lot of people don't make it back. After high school, I decided to go to college. And I went to Prairie View A&M University. This is a HBCU. And I felt like this was my time to just experience what the world had to offer. I was no longer under the umbrella of my parents. I had no one really telling me what to do per se. I was at the age to where I could make my own decisions. So I already fixed in my mind that I was just gonna live the college life. And, you know, thinking back on it, it was like kind of sad when you think about it, like, man, there is so many times where my parents could have got that call. Like they could have got that call like, you know, we have your daughter, like, or like, we hate to report, I don't mean to laugh about it, but like, it's just like, whoo, there was some times to where by the grace of God, his angels was with me, covering me, shielding and protecting me from all hurt, harm, and danger. And I'm thankful to God now to where, looking back on it, he has really kept me in certain situations to where I probably shouldn't. The story could have been a different way. And I just thank God for keeping me through that. And at that time in college, I was going to church a little bit on campus. Some may not know, but some may know. Campus churches, they try to keep everything, I would say, politically correct. So the teachings weren't necessarily what I was used to. And some of the things that they would say in church, I wouldn't always agree, but I understand that they were just saying that to not offend any of the students. So I didn't really enjoy going there that much. And then Prairie View is in like a country town. So if I wanted to go to a different church, I would have to drive quite a ways to go to church. I think they had one or two churches in town, but they weren't necessarily my belief. So I normally would just go to the campus church every now and then, but it wasn't like I was getting fed spiritually during my time in college. While I was in college, I was still connected to my home church a little bit. I was involved with ministry with them while I was in college. But I remember one day I got the message that they didn't need my services anymore. They didn't need me to work in ministry. And I'm like, okay, like I've been helping y'all all these years. I'm about to graduate soon, so I'm going to be back. And I was just like kind of dumbfounded at that, that they kind of dismissed me from ministry. And, to be honest, rightfully so, because I wasn't necessarily doing what I was supposed to do anyways. But after I graduated, I came back home, and it was kind of a relief for me. I felt so much peace being back at home, especially, living a life to where, for over a span of 4 years, literally my flesh and my spirit was warring against each other. It's like every instance where I made the wrong decision, or every instance where I thought about making the wrong decision, it was definitely my flesh and my spirit fighting against each other because of all of the stuff that was instilled in me as a child growing up. I knew right from wrong. I knew what I should do. I knew what I shouldn't be doing. And it was a constant battle. And I know that may be for you, right now in your life, you may be where I was. There may be a war between your flesh and your spirit. And sometimes your spirit wins and sometimes your flesh wins. But I made a decision after coming back from college that I wanted my spirit to win. I was tired of my flesh winning over me. And, I decided to dedicate my life back to Christ. I found a new church, and the church really helped me realize who God was. And it brought me out of kind of the negative space that I was in. I was going to that church for the last 8 years up until I moved. And I'm so thankful for the ministry because it really helped me grow into taking God more seriously. I encourage those that may not have a ministry or may not have a church community. I encourage you to find one that fits you, find one that fits where you want to go in God, and where you can actually learn and put time into the things that God makes time for. The church that I went to, they were heavy in prayer. They were heavy in being in church participation. They were heavy in letting God have his way. And I think it's very important that we find places like that nowadays, to where you can really grow in your strength and your knowledge of God. And I would say that was the major turning point in my life, was when I found the ministry that helped me reignite the fire that I once had. I'll tell you this though, once you decide to turn your life over to Christ, there is trials and tribulations that come directly after that, that is trying to really turn you away and turn you back into what you left. So there was a lot of ups and downs for maybe, I would say, a good 3 years or 4 years after that, with me, peeling off that old man and trying to walk in newness of life. And I did fall a couple of times. I did fall short. There was times where I didn't meet the mark, but the whole thing about that is making sure that you never give up. As long as you repent, turn away from your sin, it's never too late. There's not a time in your life to where God won't reconcile you back to him if you have a pure heart, if you have pure intentions. God will not turn away from you. And I'm just so thankful that he brought me over to the other side without me, having to end in tragedy, or having to come to him in a place where I was completely broken. A lot of times people have to get really broken before they turn to God. And that could be painful, times when you're broken, you lose a lot of things. You lose sleep, you maybe lose money, you maybe lose friends and family and all that kind of stuff. And I'm grateful that God didn't have to break me for me to turn to him. He waited, he was patient with me. He spoke to my heart to where I had no choice but to turn back to him. So I just want to encourage you all that your testimony is special. Feel free to share your testimony with those that will listen. Make sure that you are conveying your testimony in a way that it will cause people to do some self-evaluation. I hope those that are listening, this podcast helps you do some self-evaluation on what you have going on in life, and maybe who you need to add into your life in order to make you better. And at the end of the day, eternity is waiting on us, and this is not our permanent home. We may live to be 100, but there's a life after that, and you have to make the decision on where you want your soul to go. Do you want your soul to go to hell and be tormented forever? Or do you want to live in heaven with God, to where you're praising him, you're worshiping him? There's no more pain. There's no more sorrow. There's no more, any negative thing that you can think of. That is not present in heaven. But there's work that we have to do here on earth to make sure heaven is our reality, to make sure that our soul is forever joyful, that our soul is forever peaceful. There's some things that we have to get right now, and that's turning away from the sin of this world. It's turning away from lies, from, fornication, from murder, from adultery, from any bad thing that you can think of. It's about that time for you to turn that all in and give that all to God. And he will make everything all right. Like I said, as soon as you make that decision, the devil knows and he's going to be after you. But don't stop, because your reward is greater on the other side. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in seeding into She's Too Quiet, feel free to give via Cash App at the handle $She's Too Quiet. Like I always say, two things: love God and love people. Until next time, deuces.